You know, and we all have our 15 minutes of fame, and I'd like to take a couple of my 15 minutes to talk about the rights and the wrongs in the world of professional wrestling.
And it is for the WWE Championship.
This match is for the ECW World Heavyweight Championship.
The World Heavyweight Championship.
The match and new NWA Heavyweight Champion.
We appreciate you guys coming out and taking your time to support women's wrestling in America.
This match is for the AWA World Heavyweight Wrestling Championship.
I had to give myself a little bit of distance from this particular episode. And not that the episode was just... choose my words wisely here. It wasn't that the episode was top to bottom horrible or anything like that. Just coming off of the previous two that just wore me out mentally, I was like, there's no reason for this show to be as, off the wall as it is. So when I saw this one, honestly, just when it went into the first 30 seconds of it, I was like, okay, I cannot believe this. So, I just had to give myself just a little bit of distance before I started talking about this particular episode. So, here we are. It is another edition of the Rights and Wrongs of Pro Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, Mr. Green, and we've got the latest edition of WOW to discuss. But before I go off into the discussion of WOW, I felt like, I've tried not to go into the world of wrestling stuff lately. This time I'm doing it as a mean to delay the inevitable. There's some days I don't mind going in talking about WOW and all that good stuff, but then there's days I'm like, this show is never going to change. It just is never going to change, and I don't see it getting any better. I think mediocrity is the bar that they have set for themselves, and that's as high as it's ever going to go. Okay. So let's not do that yet. I'm getting out of order here. So it is time to do what I would normally do. This is the news, views, and updates. And we will kick that off with this. Evolve has premiered on Tubi TV. And I think if you're outside of the United States, then you would be watching it on YouTube. But for those of us here in the U.S., Tubi TV is the home of WWE's latest program. And I took a look at the first half of it. I didn't watch all of it, to be quite honest with you. Not that it was bad. I just had other things I needed to do. I had grown folk, adult things to do. I had to be responsible. So I was like, all right, let me go and clean the house and all that stuff like that. But from what I saw, it is like it's like the WWE's version of an independent show. I mean, that's the easiest way that I could put it. It's a very stripped down, bare bones look, other than the LED screen that they, or the entranceway that they walk out of. Outside of that, I mean, most of that you could get from any other wrestling promotion that has a TV studio, I guess. And that would be the major difference, is that they exist in a TV studio opposed to like a gym or, the things that we out on the indies would probably have to do. But aside from that, I mean, it looks like I think it's actually in the same location as their Performance Center. I think, is it Performance Center? I had that written down. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's there. So that gives them a lot of leeway in how they're going to produce their show. And it's not like they were catering to a huge audience. I mean, if they had 60 people there, I would be shocked. I mean, like what I said, it looks like WWE's version of an independent show. Stripped down, not a lot of flash to it. Again, other than the LED wall that they have. But other than that, and I'm sure backstage they probably got a million things going on like they do at every other show. But on camera, is pretty down to the bones. But it's nice, and they open up the show with a ladies match, so they will go down in history as like, well, the first match that took place on WWE's Evolve. And remember, this is WWE Evolve. They did purchase the rights to Evolve from Scapolsky. God damn, Scapolsky? I can't even say his name. Gabe Scapolsky. I hope I'm saying that right. Yeah, so when they bought that, they got the rights, they got the name, they can use whatever they want, and it seemed like they've decided to recycle that particular concept, even down to the logo. Other than the fact that there's a little WWE logo within it. But it started off, they gave you some when I call it backstory, they gave you a little video package on the legacy. That's probably a better way to put it. The legacy of Evolve. And they showed some of the big names that had come through, you know, like your Drew McIntyre's when he was still Galloway, Cody Rhodes stopping through there, the Street Profits and some others. So that they have set that up. Now, do I think that Evolve is going to compete? Because they do put it on Wednesday nights, and it does air live, and it also airs against AEW. Do I think that Evolve is going to hurt AEW? No way. Not in this incarnation. NXT is probably the bigger hurt on AEW, but Evolve will draw some people. I have no doubt about that. They will get some fans to tune in and watch that show opposed to AEW, but I don't think it's going to be a significant hit on AEW, at least not in this incarnation, not yet. It's probably going to take some time and some effort for it to grow into something along those lines. But I also do not think that that's something that they're overly concerned with. Like, just looking at the show, I do not get the impression that they're like, man, this thing has got to get 500,000 viewers, otherwise it's going to be a bust. It just doesn't even feel that way. It feels like this is the developmental for the developmental. If I could make that comparison, that's exactly what this feels like. But it's going to have some people on there that Kendall Gray and Carly Bright opened it up against Danny Palmer and Callie Armstrong, which I did watch the match, and they were pretty good there. They gave them some time, and it's a bit refreshing, I must say, even if the crowd was not actively moving every second of the match. They felt like a genuine wrestling crowd, like they wanted to be there, and they were going to cheer things that were worth cheering for. So I enjoyed that. And like I said, the ring looks huge, especially when you're coming off of watching, and I hate to make a comparison to WoW, but it looks huge when you're coming off of watching that. And I pretty much did. I came off of watching WoW on my Tableau, which is over-the-air DVR. And then I went right off into this. And yeah, I was like, it's same genre, just like it just felt miles apart. But it seems like it's got some time to grow. The only face that I could look at immediately and like, hey, I know that person, or I recognize them, was Kylie Ray. Kylie Ray is there, and she was like right on the front row. She's a WWE ID talent, and I know there's been some other people that was like, yeah, I know that person too, and this person, that person. Most of them I honestly did not know that well. I might have seen their face run around on the indies at some point, but I wasn't overly familiar with them. But I am going to tune in, and I'm going to see how this goes and where it kind of grows into. But I will add this one little piece of insight. This is just me. But this feels like another leg of the WWE choking out the talent pool from AEW. Like, I know it is great for some talents that's out there on the indies. And I realize that the war right now isn't necessarily over money, it's over talent. Both of them have money. And I don't think that that's a big issue on either end of the spectrum with WWE or AEW. Yeah, Tony Khan is blissfully ignorant to it because he doesn't have as good of a deal, but he's still a billionaire, and he can pump as much money into AEW as he feels like it. Whether it works or not, he can just keep doing it. WWE has ridiculous amounts of money through the TV deals that they've got. So money, I like I said, I don't think that's some sort of major issue with them. However, like I said, the fight here is for talent. And considering that the WWE has started to roll out their ID program where they've got promotions or promotions/schools that carry the ID banner, or some talents that's out there that carry the ID talent. Now they got championships. We saw the post with Triple H in front of the 2 ID belts. And you know that if they're able to take those things, because I believe they will be defended on Evolve, but if they're able to take those belts out on the indies, the one thing I do concern with when it comes to that, because I ain't concerned about them choking out the talent, the talent pool, or cutting off the pipeline, and they certainly are. Getting back to the point of that, but yeah, they certainly are cutting off the pipeline that AEW might have had, because once they get ID'd or they get a championship or they're part of a roster that goes, that the WWE has underneath their umbrella, they're probably very unlikely to blow that off and go to AEW just because. Unless they're just going to toss them crazy money to do it. And, if they want to make Tony Khan spin himself into a hole, I mean, that'll never happen. But if we want to make him overpay for talents, then, I'm sure they'd be like, have at it. You want to get this person 3 times what they're worth, knock yourself out. But it's not just that. I mean, it's the partnership with TNA, because that's going to be a thing. If you're there, that could potentially, not guaranteed, but potentially get you into WWE at some point in time. But now I can go back to what my concern with the ID. My concern with that is that it's going to create wrestling snobs. Much like the same way that AEW did when they first got built up. And they were the darling of the dance. They were the belle of the ball. And the spotlight was on them, and everybody and everything wanted to be in and a part of AEW when they first rolled out. Well, at that point, anybody that showed up on AEW's television, whether they were in the squash match role or not, whether they just went there and stood in front of the AEW logos and took the picture like everybody did, a lot of them came back on the indies asking for I was on AEW, so, I should be getting paid XYZ. I've heard this from multiple promoters. That, it was the stamp of AEW. It's like actors out there. In Atlanta, the equivalent of that would be when people got on to Tyler Perry, but they didn't really have a prominent role. They would have like a one line in the background that's like, well, I was a featured extra on Tyler Perry's this, that, and the other. Like, well, okay, but that doesn't really do much for your resume overall. And AEW is the same thing. It's like, they good for them that they got on AEW's TV and they got to take a picture in front of the backdrop and all that stuff like that. But independent promoters out there aren't looking at the fact that you just happen to be on AEW's television. They were looking at the fact that, hey, are you a name and are you going to draw some people to want to watch, or not? I shouldn't even say watch, buy a ticket to come to my show. Because outside of that, I don't care if you was on AEW or not. It does not make it feasibly manageable for me to hire you. You know, when you boosted yourself up another $300 just because you took a job on, you know, and when I say job, I mean you was on there as the enhancement talent on AEW's programming, or you was on Dark, or you was on Elevation, or something like that. So I think that if there's anything that you may have to look out for it going forward, it may be the old wrestling snobbery about to rear his ugly head. Was like, well, I'm a WWE ID talent, so you know you should be paying me this. And look, if you happen to be there, I get it. We're in a capitalist society, and you should be getting paid the most amount of money that you can get. But bear in mind, a lot of those promoters do not have that kind of cash. Now, if they do and they're willing to spend that, then great. Maybe they can do something with you. But I'll say, taking account that a lot of them, the economics of that just don't work out. You know, there's nothing against you. And I'm speaking in general terms for a lot of people, only because, like I said, at least in 3 different promotions that I were aware of, did they kind of get hit with that. It's like, I wanted to get this person, but they was like, I should be getting paid like $500, even though nobody knows who I am. Anyhow, I'm not going to go on and on about that. But end result, Evolve on Tubi TV right now for you to watch. Also on Tubi TV, by the way, NXT has been dropped onto Tubi TV. At least a few seasons of it. Seasons 8 through 18. Now, I'm not saying that they have every single episode of those seasons. Some of them seem somewhat short. Like, I think there was 1 or 2 there was only like 3 episodes in the season. But by and large, if you're trying to go back and you're trying to look at some of those early NXT, the gold and black era, if you will, like I said, seasons 8 through 18 are all on Tubi TV right now. So it's not just Evolve. If you just want to have wrestling and I guess a free wrestling fix without having to pay Peacock or Netflix or something like that. And they are current. That's the other thing. I was not aware of that up until this point. They are current in their episodes. So if you don't have an antenna and you can't get the CW for whatever reason, but you've been wanting to watch NXT, well, now you got that. Tubi TV is free. I know a lot of people used to give a lot of crap about Tubi, like, man, they don't run nothing but terrible movies. That's not even true anymore. Like, they have some good movies on there. They still got some B movies, but they've been purchased by a studio. I can't remember which one it was. I mean, they just ran the Super Bowl. Last time I looked on there, they just did like a drop of, is it all 3 Equalizers? Like, it was like a Denzel Washington drop. I don't know why they specifically chose him, but all the movies that I saw, it was Equalizer. What else was it? No, John Q. I can't remember if Malcolm X. It was another action movie that he did. And it was like 5 or 6 Denzel Washington movies that just got thrown in there all of a sudden. It's like, wow, okay. So all of that to say is that there are actually some good things on there. And and of course, I think they had brought up some Gene Hackman movies in the algorithm recently because, obvious reasons. So, I mean, you got your choice. You got a lot of things in there to kind of pick from and look at and watch. And it won't cost you nothing. You just got to sit through the commercials, which ain't bothering me. That becomes the bathroom break for me. Also, within the context of NXT and WWE doing this, I just feel like I should point this out because I have consistently brought up the fact that when they send their metadata, I'm going to label it as that, to broadcast platforms, a lot of that information is outdated. Now, is that a big deal for them? Maybe not. It's probably not going to affect their viewership or, their standing in television one way or the other. But I do bring it up because I think that just internally, it's something that you should probably look at and make more uniform. And when I say that, I mean like the logo that, again, the tableau is going to be my example here. So I record WOW when I'm, at work, just in case I happen to miss it because, say, a big event is happening there, basketball, golf, whatever. Whatever happens to be on in the wee hours of the night that makes us have to concentrate on other stuff. Well, I try to make sure that I have a backup. If I'm going to do the review, I'll go ahead and record it. So I set it to record it. And when you do that on their operating screen, just like most other shows, you got little thumbnails, or most other streaming devices, because it's like an internal streaming device. You have your thumbnails for whatever it is that you're watching. WOW's thumbnails use the previous logo, not the current logo. WOW's information up there reads stuff like, and watch WOW with AJ Mendez when she hasn't been there in 2 years. It's things like that. Again, is that going to hurt the show any more than they already hurt themselves? No, it's not. I just bring that up because it should be addressed. The reason I say that is because when I looked at NXT on that tableau and on Tubi, uniformed. Same thing between the both of them. The only one that's different is if you do a search for NXT, then it shows you the black and gold version. That's it. But even then, it's still like it still applies because they have dug down to that point. It is a uniform thing. It does help with branding, and they being WOW, should check into that internally. I know that they won't, but they should check into it internally. Side note, I got an email, and it is probably the easy AI email that I've seen as it related to this podcast. I was like, who the hell is sending this? And it is so ridiculous. I just felt like, I need to just read this. The email was titled, I Think You're On to Something, and it came, it's not important where it came from. But they sent this. Hey, Mr. Green, I was tuned into your latest episode of WOW and absolutely loved the segment recaps. The review of the chainsaw/Pep Riley angle is particularly engaging, especially as he dissected his ongoing narrative and potential impact on the show. Now, I knew right there, I was like, I know they didn't listen to that because I didn't talk about how it impacted the show. But it could have been taken that way. So I said I'll give it the benefit of the doubt, but I'll continue. Listening to your analysis, I realized how relevant my experiences in pioneering telemedicine for federal workers might be to your audience, especially those interested in innovative approaches in niche markets. Given my role in driving One Fed to become a national leader, I'd love to discuss joining you as a guest. Let's align our missions to change and innovation. I was like, what? So it seemed like whoever this person is, who did not leave a name, that's why I was like, they probably just got an A and just type me out a message and send out to whatever podcast you can goddamn find. So you can come on to a wrestling podcast that are review women's wrestling on a week-to-week basis to talk about medicine. Oh boy, fascinating. I just found that quite interesting. That was just a little sidebar. So back on track here. Josh Barnett's Bloodsport 13 is about to take place in Las Vegas, April the 17th. And who do you know that's going to be on there but Natalya? That's right, WWE's Natalya, for the first time since she was an independent worker, is going to go and wrestle someplace other than WWE. Now, I don't know if I would have necessarily wanted her to do Game Changer, but technically it's not Game Changer. Game Changer would be presenting it. But Bloodsport on his own, yeah, I mean, that might be interesting. Might make me watch it. I may want to see it to see how well she does. Nataya's great. I love seeing her work. I mean, even when I just look at her training people, she is moving in that ring. But seeing her outside of that environment would be interesting to say the least. But also, Micah, I think I'm pronouncing the name right, from Stardom will be there, and Mayu Yamashita will be there as well. So it's another somewhat crossing of the streams, and in wrestling, not WWE, but in wrestling, and this is the second time that Bloodsport has gotten people out of WWE and other promotions just in general to show up. I mean, what was it last year? Didn't Slamovich and Baszler, I'm not saying they wrestled each other, but they were both on the same show. So it might be interesting to watch, if nothing else, to see how this is going to present. Because the last few times that I've seen footage of Bloodsport, it was worked a lot more realistically, shall we say, than your average wrestling match, particularly your average wrestling match now. So I don't know. And I think I may have to tune in. Maybe. We'll see. Carmella Lee Von Dale has made some waves apparently by her assessment as to why she has not had her contract renewed with WWE. And in most people's cases, it seems she seems to come off as somewhat bitter. Now, I'm not going to go that far to say that, but I will say that she probably should not have started pointing the finger at WWE quite yet. And no one likes to be fired. No one likes that. It happens. It's a thing that goes on with most people in their lives. I've been fired from a job before too. It does not feel good. And if you were gonna ask me that day or probably within a month, I probably would have said some harsh stuff about the job too. But in this particular case, I don't know if this is the hill that she wants to die on when she's saying that, well, did they fire me because I'm a woman and because I got pregnant? I cannot say that they did that or not, but I can say that other people have been pregnant within that company and come back. I mean, Alexa Bliss, she just showed back up after maternity leave. So it's a hard argument to mount against the WWE and saying, well, they didn't treat me fair. And almost, she put Corey Graves, put the spotlight on him, her husband. Like, well, he got to come back. Why not me? It was like, all of that to say, first off, I don't think that she's worked any wrestling promotions aside from WWE to begin with. So it might be that she just does not know anything different and doesn't want to do anything different, because the WWE had a strong habit, whether they intended to do it or not, of getting people to just if they're not working here, then you just don't want to work at all. I mean, there was a little period of time where if you got let go of WWE, they would just quit or just stop working wrestling altogether. I mean, look at Rich Swann and Leo Rush. Now, they both wrestling again, but go find those posts when they got let go of the company. It was, I'm done with wrestling. They took my dream away from me, and they've conditioned some people that If you can't work here, then you just don't, you don't need to work. But getting back to Carmella, or like I said, I guess formerly known as Carmella, Lee Von Dale, I think that's her name. Again, I don't know if that's the hill that she wants to die on, and if she is really bent on being a wrestler, well, now's her chance to try to make that work. And I know it's probably scary, but at the same time, she also probably has more leeway than the average person out there on the wrestling circuit is ever going to get. Because her husband is still working for WWE, and I'm pretty sure he's making good money. She was being paid while she was out up until this point. So I'm not privy to their finances, but I would imagine they're not down to their last dime. And if she was going to try and go someplace else, well, it's very likely she would be priced out of any independent promotion. But that don't mean that she can't go to, some of the larger promotions. Whether she wants to do that or not, different issue. But time will tell. But I do not think that she needs to go on the let me bash WWE tour, or, let me get sympathy on myself because they let me go. She ain't the only one. She's not the first. She's not going to be the last. And just as a side note, and I say this about every company, not just WWE, that nonsense that these wrestling promotions and other companies, not just them, like to pump to their people like, we're all family here. Knock that off. Because unfortunately, some people that get hired believe it. A job is a job. Now, you can like the people that you work with. You can love the people that you work with. And you can love the job that you're doing. But when it comes down to the business of what they're doing, they're not going to have any remorse about letting you go. So, I mean, this whole, it is family up until it ain't. So that whole nonsense that, WWE, we're all family here. Look, they can say that to you as much as they want to say it. Do not get indoctrinated with that. And that applies to every wrestling promotion and every other job that likes to tell people that. Because at the end of the day, when it comes down to it and it's for them to do their business, they will do their business. And if that means you got to get let go, they will probably do that. It's unfortunate, but it's true. So that's the best thing I could tell Carmella or anybody else. Do not buy into this idea that this is all family and we love each other and whatnot. No, that only goes so far. I'm sure you will love being around the people that you're with and enjoy it and all that good stuff like that. But when time is due, time is due. Anyhow, moving on. This is a report that I am going to label as unconfirmed because I don't know any of these outlets that have said something about it. So take that with a grain of salt, as they say. This was from PWN Reports, Viper Reports, Bodyslam.net I do know about. But it has been reported that Evolution or WWE is thinking about doing a second Evolution PLE. Now I can see that because let's be honest, it does not have to be in some sort of major stadium if they wanted to do it. And they don't have to worry about selling pay-per-view buys anymore. It's just going to be one of the things that if they do it, either you tune into it or not. But it is being reported that the tentative date is in July 5th at the Mohegan Sun in Connecticut. That is what is being listed so far. Now, I do stress that I cannot sit up and say that this is confirmed. I am not familiar with Viper reports. PWN, I'm not overly familiar with. Bodyslam.net has been kind of hit or miss with me at times. So I'm not going to sit up here like, well, this is definitely happened. I don't know. All I can say is that it would be nice if it did. At least it will be for the ladies within the WWE. It might not be good outside of them if they pull that, if they actually pull it together. And I hate to make a draw bullseye on the Wild, but I mean, honestly, Evolution happening as a PLE might be the worst thing that could happen to Wild. Because it'll only serve to make them look not even second rate, probably third or fourth. Now, it would be interesting. And when I say that, let me be clear to say that is not what the talent would cause them to be. Talent won't make them look third or fourth. The booking will. So long as the booking is the way that the booking has been, there's nothing that they would be able to do that would be able to compete with anything that a all-female WWE event would provide. So, it is what it is. Time will tell. I brought up a little bit earlier that, the metadata that Wild does on their shows or for their shows isn't always consistent. And I forgot to bring up the fact that they're on their press page, and I haven't brought up the press page of Wild because it's not really something that, as far as I know, that they can control. This is Paramount's press website. And on that press website, and I think I talked about this before, that's where they filter out the press releases to me and other people that subscribe to that or applied for it, I guess it would be a more appropriate term. And the photos that I do grab, I usually grab from them because that's where a lot of their still shots and whatnot go. But I honestly, I want to know who is running this thing because it is a jumbled mess at times. And like I said, I didn't bring it up because it wasn't really relevant to the show, but it's like every turn I make with Wild, there's something that's going wrong with it. Even in its periphery. Like I can go onto their press site and I can click this particular episode. Like say the latest episode that's on there now. Which would be previews of what's coming on this Saturday as I'm recording. But what they'll show are photos from episodes that aired like 2 weeks ago. All just kind of mixed into it and sometimes nothing new at all. And I just, they have enough issues without having this go be bad too. Anyway, that doesn't, it just doesn't seem like it's overseen by anybody. I don't know. And lastly, because I hear them talking about it week to week, that they're the greatest wrestling team in wrestling today, top tier. Now, I think I said something along the lines of they cannot possibly believe that. I don't think they do. I mean, that's just got to be the gimmick. However, I thought, what would make them qualify as the best wrestling team ever put together? And so I sat down, I gave it some thought, like I did with the manager thing, about a year or so ago. So what qualifications would you apply to the best and top ranked team to see how they measure up? I came up with 4 categories. That's just for me. Now, if there's anything else that, you would think of, please leave it in the comments below. But here's the things that I came up with. 1, in-ring work / chemistry of said in-ring work. 2, significant championships. 3, industry impact. 4, money / revenue generating ability. Those were the big qualifications that I would apply to anybody that's going to be labeled or listed as a great team. So let's take this one by one, shall we? In-ring work and chemistry. Well, I'm not going to deny that Top Tier has good in-ring work, at least by what I've seen. Now, I am not taking into account whether or not they need days in advance to work everything out. I'm not taking into account whether they got to practice this ahead of time or whatever the case may be. Just going off of what I'm seeing with them on screen at that time. And for the most part, they're a very cohesive team. I mean, fair is fair, and I can't take that away from them. Are they the single most cohesive team that I've seen? No. I mean, they probably got a ways to grow for that. And it's going to take some time. Especially for them to be recognized as some sort of high-level in-ring work. Because some of that is going to come from the opponents that they're up against. And at this stage, I'd say this, try to, without insulting anybody, at this stage, them getting wins over Spring Break 24/7 and the Dojo Defenders and their partner of the week isn't going to qualify for that. That's not going to help. If I can paraphrase the Scott Steiner line, you beat a lot of teams. You won a lot, but you beat nobody, at this point. So I would give them high marks for in-ring work and chemistry amongst the 3 of them. But I cannot, in all honesty, they're the best working team that I've seen. They're just not there yet. And I'm sure if you'd ask me, who do you apply? Now, keep in mind, they just said the best team in all of wrestling. They didn't say all of women's wrestling. They said all of wrestling. So that takes into account the Usos. It takes into account the New Day, past or present. It takes into account the Bloodline. It takes into account, I'm not fond of the Bucks, but it takes into account the Young Bucks or the Elite. It takes into account, a lot of different, Pretty Empowered. It takes into account of a lot of teams, some of which have years on them. So that would be a big cutoff right there. Significant championships. Now, you already know what I feel about the belts that they've got. So that alone is like a 0 for me. They don't have a significant championship. They have a championship, but it's not a significant one. There's no lineage to it. They didn't win it. It was just gifted to them. It's just, there's nothing that has been attached to or built on the legacy of said championships. And the only thing that makes it worse is that I fully believe that they only got those things just because they just complained and got it. We want belts too, okay. Now, whether it worked out that way, I'm not saying that that's what happened. I'm just saying, it would not shock me because those belts don't serve any purpose, and it causes them to live in their own little bubble. That every so often a team will filter into, they'll find a third partner, they'll wrestle against them, they'll lose, and then they'll go away. So the titles at this stage mean nothing. Could it be made to mean something over time? Sure. But as of right now, those belts don't mean anything. So, and they've not done anything else. They haven't gone after any other championships. So there are no significant titles there. And it's just carrying on and on and on and on and on. They haven't, and as a side note, they haven't even had a significant feud. So that doesn't help elevate anything. So I would give that a low mark. I would give that like a 0 because, like I said, the championships don't mean anything. Industry impact. They have no industry impact. They're not causing people to create their own versions of top tier. When you talk about people who have industry impact, I mean, they drive the direction of where, business is going. Whether that be you go back decades and you look at the Road Warriors. Well, the Road Warriors coming around essentially created Road Warrior knockoffs. They created an industry term, the Road Warrior Pop. That's an industry impact. The Rock and Roll Express, same thing. Them coming around and being what they were made people create clones of the Rock and Roll Express. You could say that about Steve Austin. Did he get cloned? No. But he pretty much saved a company. I mean, more or less. Him existing drove the direction of that company upward. You can say that about John Cena. Just over the time that he gave to that company, over 20-something years, being his front, his headliner for the face of the company for 2 decades. Those things, and I could probably go on and on and on, but those things are industry impacts. Things that cause ripples throughout the entirety of the wrestling industry. Not just your company, the entirety of the wrestling industry. Is anybody really going to be willing to stand up and be like, well, Top Tier has industry impact? They can't even say that. And that leads off into the last thing, money/revenue generating ability, which is pretty much tied into industry impact to some, like another leg of it. Well, again, how often do you tune in expressly to see Top Tier? How many tickets have you bought to see Top Tier? How many Top Tier t-shirts have you got? Can Top Tier legitimately say that, well, when we're on the screen, the numbers go up, or we sell more shirts than anybody, or whatever the case may be? Have they done any of those things? So, no. It's like these things don't exist. They haven't happened. And I know that, that's just part of the shtick. They have to do that. The coach, we're the greatest team ever. Well, okay, fine. And in their universe, well, honestly, I can't even say that they're even the best team in their own universe. That probably, would belong to Miami Sweet Heat, if anything. And unless they have wrestled them and beat them, how can you put them up against, we're the best? Like, even in the bubble that they exist in, they aren't the best there. So they certainly aren't going to be the best across a sweeping industry. I can appreciate the work and the effort that Top Tier do when they get into the ring and all that stuff like that. But in-ring work is about the height of these 4 categories that I could give. Anything outside of that, significant championships, industry impact, money/revenue generating ability, those things don't exist for them. It's more than just what goes on in the ring, bell to bell. And even at that, I don't think anybody could sit there and justifiably argue that they're the best working team in all of pro wrestling. Sounds good for them to say it, but I don't think anybody is going to die on that hill to use that phrase. All right. So we've gotten through that. Oh, yeah. There's one other thing. I was asked a question. Not an email this time. This was, me talking to some pro wrestling with some individuals at work. And, we go through the normal rigmarole, and you should be doing that. I was like, that's not going to happen. But then the other question came out, well, would you interview one of them? Interview who? Would you interview anybody ever on the WoW? I was like, he used to do interviews. He went through the channel and saw a couple of those. And then, would you interview a WoW talent? I was like, well, the short answer is yes. Yeah, I would interview one. I can't remember if I talked about this before or not, so I'll just continue. But the short answer is, of course I would. Now, there's a caveat to that. Caveat being is I do not believe that it would, that would take place. For much the same reasons. Put it this way, the girls that are there that have some sort of existence in the wrestling industry outside of WoW, I don't think would have any issues necessarily being interviewed by me or anybody else. The ones that are in WoW and only work WoW, and that's the only wrestling that they participated in and the only wrestling that they know about, I don't think that they would want to come on my podcast. Especially considering I've been very critical of the program. Now, again, the other ones I don't think really care. And some of which they probably are not going to argue against whatever criticisms I've levied. But I'm sure they also don't want to rock the boat either. Like, who would want to come on this podcast and hear me not debate? I wouldn't debate with anybody. I mean, look, it would be as respectful as any other interview I've ever had. And all of them have been respectful. I'm not going to sit up here and bum rush them or ambush them when they get on there like, aha, I got you. Not going to do that. It'd be as easygoing as it has always been with any other interview I've ever had. However, like certain things I know I would probably try to find a way to phrase so that it's, not insulting, but still, like, how could I interview somebody on that show after being completely critical about it and be like, man, you were great. And you should do such and such. And you've been one of the greatest wrestlers I've ever seen. Yeah. Like, that would be insane of me to do that. And that would apply with some, but not all. And especially, and again, we're talking about WoW originally trained girls. If any of them were on the show for me to do that, it would be hard not to bring up the question as to what was the point behind this, that, or the other. Okay, I'll give you an example. Well, we just finished talking about top tier. Let's just say in this hypothetical scenario, Coach Campanelli comes onto the show, right? Could I sit here and have her be interviewed by me and not bring up the Aerial Sky angle and ask her whether you thought this was a good idea or not? Or explain it to me why this was supposed to work on paper, where did it fall apart, or whatever the case may be. Things like that. Is that something that she would want to talk about? Genesis, who I think is talented, but she's been like in a rut. It's everything that every week that she shows up is the same thing. She has a match, she wins the match, she gets the microphone. David, I want to be the best and on main event and top. I want a title shot and this, that. She cuts a good promo, but it's just not going anywhere. And it doesn't really even seem like it has any direction to it. It's just, she's just a hamster on a wheel. So when I say things like that, like I can't imagine that some of them would want to come on to the show. Now I could be completely wrong. I could be absolutely wrong. Somebody might prove me like, hey, I want to, they might have words with me. It's like they may want to tell me different. Like, no, that's not how it is at WoW. Here's why. That's possible. But I do not perceive that to be a thing. At least not for me. And with maybe like a quarter of the roster, I don't think that would be something that they would particularly want to do. And even if they did, if the management heard any of my critique to the creative there, Majors, McLean, Zane, or whoever else might be, in charge of that, they might not want that person to appear or be questioned by me. And honestly, I cannot say that I would blame them, because if they showed up, I would have to ask certain questions just for me to feel comfortable about it. Like I can't have you on this show and not ask this thing, depending on who it is. So, and again, that's not to say that would be rude, disrespectful, whatever the case may be, but I would have to ask, like, why did this angle take place? Why did this not make any sense? Why did this just start off in the middle? What were y'all trying to do with this thing? Those things I want to know. And I realize, especially after looking at some other people being interviewed, which is what kind of keyed that thing off to begin with, him asking me, because I believe, who did he say he was watching? Who did Collins? I think he was watching Collins, and I don't know which one it was, but he did check out an interview with a wild girl. I believe it was her. So anyway, I just don't think that would be anything that they want to do. And the other podcasters seem very friendly when that comes up. Not that they should be mean or pressing them or putting their feet to the fire. I think I did talk about this before. But it's not that they shouldn't be doing those things, or that they should be doing those things, excuse me. It's just that sometimes I get the impression that some of them are not going to get really inquisitive or try to find, give me the shoot interview. Let's get down to dirt. Why is this thing happening? What did you do this for? What is the creative here? How much creative do you have? How much say-so do you have? Do you even feel comfortable bringing up that this makes sense or this does not make sense? Who does the prop work here? Things like that. Things that I actually want to know. And I'm sure some of you out there probably would want to know it too, but I don't think I would be holding my breath on that to take place. So, as we finish that up, I've stalled long enough. We are getting ready to go off into the review for WoW and its latest episode. So I'm going to give this a little bit of a break, and when we come back, time for the review. And we're back. So, let us begin with this. This episode, I won't go so far to say that, well, they're just horrible. I won't go so far to say that. And like I said, I had to give myself some distance to this because it was somewhat bland. And, when I watched it the first time, I was like, I'm not really feeling this episode this week. And particularly when it started off, and it started off immediately into an error. And it did that alone, for me, set the tone of the show. Now, what the error was, the show started with a Fab Four segment. Begins with them coming out the ringside, or coming to the ring. Within 10 seconds of the show, they cut to the video intro, and it shows the titles that are about to be challenged for by the team of HollySwag and Penelope Pink. This is just disappointing, because it's not like this hasn't happened already. I pointed out the same thing, the exact same problem, 8 weeks ago. That's what it is. It's on the WPN Instagram right now. If you go back 8 weeks on that page, you'll see it. And you'll see the picture, I didn't highlight it, just drew a little circle around it, but HollySwag and Penelope Pink both wearing the Wild Tag Team Championships. And here you have them coming out, getting ready to challenge for the position of being a top contender for titles they haven't won, even though we saw them wearing them in the video prior. And that's why I say it opened up and it just set the tone for this show for me immediately. And I was like, oh boy. So I am already assuming that they're going to win the titles, even though we know that the title match happens next week. So they all come out in the ringside, and Lana starts the promo, demanding the title shot for a team. And I like Lana Star. I've spoken highly of her, but at the same time, the promo is somewhat a rinse and repeat when she is talking about getting a title shot. It's been the same thing, largely done with Miami Sweet Heat. It's like, we've done this and that, and we deserve a title shot. We just need a title shot. Give me a title shot. Now, she still is a good presence on camera. She still is good on the mic when she has to do what she needs to do. But this segment also did not do the narrative of this story any favors. I will explain that. So as she's talking, here comes Big Rigs and Bourbon. They stand up on the ramp. And they cut the promo, and then basically getting to the point is like, well, we see two teams in the ring. Who is it that you want us to fight? Now, the setup here is that Lana is speaking in generalities. That's easy. The team that has this, the team that has that, blah, 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 blah. And then she does the unveil, and, is, not Miami, is Penelope Pink and HollySwag. Because beforehand, you could argue that she might be talking about Miami Sweet Heat, right? Here's why I said that there was a production, in my opinion. Now, they could do what they want to do, and they could shoot it how they want to shoot it. But I feel like it was missing something here because the camera was locked in on Lana Star. And you didn't see Miami Sweet Heat. Reaction is what this should be played up for. Babyfaces come out. Who is it that you want us to fight? Lana goes into her stick. What should have happened is that at least all three of them should have been framed together. Lana, both members of Miami Sweet Heat. If not all five. Now, they might not have been able to accomplish that. That's why I say at a minimum, should have been the three of them. It should have been the three so that you could get the reaction of them as she's talking it up. You'll be able to see them because you got some of the body language, maybe because you saw their hand and you saw maybe the back of them, but you didn't see the face. They couldn't sell the shock and the awe of being overlooked. And that's the whole story that they're trying to present. Like, what? You chose them over us? So if you can't see it, I can't feel it. And I don't understand how that can happen because in most cases, when they're trying to get us to feel for something, it's something that is never shown on screen at all. Here they had the perfect opportunity to show it, and they still didn't. We should have seen them standing next to her, egos getting inflated as she's talking about this the great team, and of course the ones that's going to go back and win the titles and this, that, and that. We should have seen them getting primed and ready and getting the egos built up, only to have the rug out pulled out from underneath them when she says Penelope Pink and HollySwag. And you see them be deflated. But what we got was a close-up on Lana Starr in a darkened ring. I don't know why they didn't have the lights on. But she's in there, and then she gives that, and then, you know, once she says that, the first person that pops up is HollySwag, like, because Lana says Hollywood swag. And then HollySwag comes up, it's Hollywood, hood. I don't know whether she's trying to force Wild to acknowledge her by her indie name or not. But I don't think that's ever going to take place. So, you know, she might not win that fight. So, even in that, it didn't come off well to me. They're building friction. They're trying to show, you know, what's going on here with the Fab Four. But even when they pulled out and you saw the entirety of the group, you didn't get to see the reactions of Miami Sweet Heat, which is the big sell point. I was like, why are they not being shown? You saw them walking in. You know, you got them there, but you missed it at a critical point. That is where the production should have talked about what they needed out of this. What are we trying to get from this segment? And if the sell was, all right, well, we got to get the reactions off of Miami Sweet Heat, then they should have, like I said, this should have been framed better. And the members of Miami Sweet Heat should have either been standing on both sides of her or something along those lines so they could be in the shot. And then you get Jesse Jones, who's basically saying that, hey, well, Miami Sweet Heat don't look happy about that, but, you know, whatever. We just like to fight. So I did at the tail end of that, you see Miami Sweet Heat, you know, with a couple of dumbfounded looks on their face as, you know, from a profile view. But I am really surprised that they didn't have a camera guy there at the bottom of the ramp to shoot inside of the ring to catch all of them together so you could see the thing properly. But we did not see that, so, you know, whatever. The argument starts in the ring, and then we, you know, I guess we'll see where that's going. But even at that, the Fab Four got their, not the Fab Four, but Miami Sweet Heat specifically had their backs turned to the hard cam, so we don't get to see it. So that was the first thing, the segment that they started off with, and it wasn't terrible, but it just did not do it for me because it didn't feel like it was produced well. I don't know who produced it, but it didn't feel like it was produced well. Should have been shot to where we could actually see it. The other thing that I noticed before I go further is that this episode looks like this is one of the audience turnover episodes. So you got some new people out there in ringside that's going on, and new people out there clapping and applauding with the thunderclappers and whatnot. The next segment, BK Rhythm with Gigi Gianni versus Xena Phoenix. So now we got to go into this. What is the alliance actually an alliance or not? It is the most loose-knit faction I have ever seen. And at this point, I'm almost fully willing to be like, just cut your losses and cut that thing off. I'm sorry to say, because I like all the members that's in it, but WoW is not doing a thing with them. if you didn't see them all four at one time, you would never know that there was a faction. Gambino never comes out with them. And with them, I mean the Brat Pack. It's like they're just an island unto themselves in this group. So, I mean, what did they gain by joining the alliance? In the kayfabe universe, what did these two gain? They didn't get anything. And even when Gambino does come out there, she largely just goes out to the commentating table and goes sit down and talk to David. So, just going through that, seeing how they've been presented, and the fact that they almost never have any other member, like they don't even let Del Rey come out there as the muscle for them. And they clearly have chemistry. They like each other. You know, and that part shines through on camera, but they don't get the chance to do anything. And they haven't even had a mission statement. This is what we're here for. This is why we're in WoW. That mission statement does not exist. The closest thing that we got to that was David McClain on some random episode saying the Alliance is here and they're here to take over WoW. And I remember at that point saying, take over how? Doing what? To who? They haven't won any championships. They haven't beaten up anybody. They haven't put anybody out. They haven't said that they were trying to take over. It's like, how are you coming to this conclusion? But the Alliance does not feel like a legitimate faction. I'm sorry to say that, but they just don't. And as much as I like Rhythm and Gianni as a tag team, I have largely just resigned myself to the fact that they're not going to do anything in this company because reasons. That's all I got. It's just because reasons. So Gianni and Rhythm, talented as they may be, this place is not going to make any sort of moves with the Brat Pack as a tag team. And I really don't sometimes understand the logic behind some of the things that they do just in general. The end of this match being one of those, but we'll get to that. So our tag team, who's part of this alliance, comes out here in a singles match to take on Xena Phoenix. Of course, that in and of itself isn't a bad thing, but it was almost certainly a recipe for loss for BK Rhythm because they can barely win as a team, so they certainly aren't going to do it one-on-one. The only good thing I can say that went on here, and yes, BK Rhythm did start off the match with her rap, and you know, at this point, again, it's not really pushing anything forward, and it's not helping to get her over. So I don't know where to really place whether the rap is doing any good for anybody or not. I mean, she looks good. She being Rhythm, like her work. I love those two together, Rhythm and Gianni. Phoenix feels like she's gaining some ground, but no, I wasn't excited about this match, even though it did win me over just in structure. I wasn't excited about seeing the two of them up against each other just because I was like, I know where this is going. So here we go. Rhythm and Phoenix. It looked good, and even Gianni on the outside, this should have been Gambino's role to come out there and accompany Rhythm to ringside in this singles match. It should have been her if we're going to play the part of her being a manager. But one thing I can say about the match is that everybody was in their spot where they needed to be, referee included. And that should not be shortchanged, you know, because sometimes those refs there, they have to do things and ignore what they were doing. I don't know this young lady's name, but in this particular match, I don't know if Rhythm kind of helped her maneuver or she was just good with it on her own. But other than one spot, there is one spot where it went kind of the went to pot. But for the most part, everybody was where they needed to be when they needed to be there. First noticeable point of that was when this front face lock by Phoenix. Rhythm pushes Phoenix into the ropes. The referee comes to the side. She's like to the right of Phoenix, but she's not looking where her view would have caught the outside. So you got Gianni, and she grabs the ankle of Phoenix while Rhythm has her hooked up in the ropes. Once she lets go, Rhythm immediately goes over to the referee and distracts her, and then that gets Gianni time to yammer with Phoenix. Phoenix turns around, she catches the clothesline, and then that's it. It turns the tide towards BK Rhythm. The other thing is that Rhythm worked, or she sold the arm. Phoenix worked the arm, Rhythm sold it. And she sold that throughout the course of the match. Intermittently, but she still sold it. So I was pretty good with all of this. Like I said, I don't think that Phoenix does bad. She hasn't developed the personality that she needs, in my opinion. But that's probably going to have to come with time, and if we're completely honest with ourselves, it's probably going to have to come someplace else. So they go through their exchanges. The time where we got to the match where I was like, okay, the positioning here was not the best, was the submission that Phoenix got in on Rhythm and Gianni trying to help. Now, up until that point, they were fine because they did another spot where, Gianni grabs the throat and she drapes over the second rope. Rhythm's maneuvering the referee out of the way so she can't see it. So up until that point, they were doing pretty good with that. It's just that when they got to, what was it, an arm bar or another variation of an arm bar, that required some help from Gianni, that was where it was like, okay, I know the ref had to sit there and basically just ignore this in its entirety. But other than that, the match in and of itself was fine. There is a point where I think Phoenix probably could have done better not to go kind of showing off to the crowd or stomping and yelling at the crowd, because it caused BK Rhythm to take like a little stutter step when she got up. What was it? I think it was Phoenix comes out of like the arm lock that Rhythm had on her, and she does a monkey flip and she gets her down. And when she gets her down, she turns and starts walking away like normal wild girls would tend to do. I don't know if this happened, but I'm nearly convinced that somebody signaled her like, hey, turn around. Because she did turn around pretty quick, and then she catches Rhythm with a spine buster. That's when she goes into her arm drag, the Japanese arm drag, and then she does the suplex. She has her little sequence. But here, without getting back to where I said that they usually do not have flaws in their game, but here was the big flaw. The double wrist lock position that BK Rhythm was locked into, and good execution there by Phoenix. Phoenix is probably somebody who should be sold on her in-ring work, even though she's not super proficient. But if there's a selling point for her at this point, that's probably going to be it. Sell her as being, submission expert or something like that until she can work up the personality to help sell who she is to the public that's watching. But in any case, she gets a double wrist lock hooked in on Rhythm. Rhythm's trying to pull herself towards the ropes so she can break the hold. Referee's looking right at her, and Gianni grabs the wrist of BK Rhythm and drags her over to the bottom rope. Now, I could have done without it being a blatant assist right in front of the referee, but, I guess we just have to excuse it and move on. So that amounts to Gianni getting up on the apron as Rhythm has Phoenix in a full Nelson. Phoenix is able to kick Gianni off. She slips out of the full Nelson, gets an armbar locked in on Rhythm, and then she hooks it in for the tap. Now, here again, this is where I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be rooting for or feeling here. Because if you just watch that finish, just look at the finish now. She gets the arm bar. She locks it down. She taps, and the bell is rung, and Phoenix doesn't let go. She's essentially refusing to let go. Gianni comes in, and she kicks the shit out of her. Gets off of her friend, her tag team partner. Am I wrong? Is it wrong for Gianni to come in there and help her partner out? Now, of course, Phoenix has a right and a reason to be mad, for being, I guess, double teamed or cheated or whatever the case may be. But Gianni also has a reason to come in there and try to break it up so that her tag team partner isn't stretched out and can't wrestle another day or whatever. So she comes in and she stomps her out and then beats her up a little bit, and then they toss her out of the ring, and then Phoenix just walks up the ramp like, all right, guys, I won. Almost like it never happened. So they tossed out to the floor and then just gets up and gives her little Phoenix sign like, yeah, I won, rise of the Phoenix and whatever she's saying. I don't know. I don't know what to get out of this. I'm like, what is this for? Is this supposed to be getting the heat on Xena Phoenix? Is it supposed to lead to a feud? Was it because Gianni was like, hey, I can't take this. You're hurting my friend. I don't know. It's anyway. This just I don't get it. I do not get it. And Phoenix is just so bland and nondescript. It's like even an attack on her doesn't cause her to do anything. That was like, at this point, if I'm running that, there are no aftermath attacks on Xena Phoenix. She doesn't sell it well. And let's get out of doing the promos in the back because she's not great at them. Let's just have her be in the ring, be the, I don't want to say cutthroat wrestler, but be the air quotes legit shoot fighter of WoW. And let her actions in the ring do that. I would encourage her to wrestle a little bit more aggressively, even if she is a babyface. Like, you need to learn to toss some people around in there. But beyond that, I mean, some of that stuff I think needs to come off because it shows off as a weakness to me. Again, what was the purpose of the aftermath? What was the purpose of the attack there? Is that going somewhere? Because it's like this has happened with her 2 or 3 times before and it never does anything. She just gets beat up. She gets up like nothing happened. Like, all right, I won. I mean, she barely sells it. She sold it all of a couple of seconds, got up. Once the referee was there, she raised her hand. It's like nothing happened. Oh, I don't know. The next segment is the next match. It's Animal Instinct versus Ashley Blaze and Karakai. This is, probably one of my worst nightmares, as you know, because I'm not a huge Animal Instinct fan, particularly when it comes to them cutting promos about anything. The reason being is because it's almost always silly and over the top and just overly cartoony. I believe one of the listeners described them as the afternoon Disney villains. And he ain't wrong. That's what they come off like, just Disney villains. So And this is why, like, I know some people like, hey, she does a good promo. I have not gotten that. I'm sorry. I haven't. What I get from her is that she knows how to cut a promo, but not necessarily a promo for any particular purpose or to drive any sort of emotion. It's just, I'm this character, I'm going to say these words, and then things will happen. So they come out, and they do their normal shtick. Katarina's got the whip, and they're cutting back to the over-the-top facials that they're making of them coming into the ring. So, I mean, that I already cannot take anything that they're doing or saying seriously just based on that. They get into the ring, and they start to cut a promo. And the promo is largely based on insulting or attempting to insult the dojo defenders. And it's like lightweight insults at the best that they could do. It's mediocre. It's poor insults on Tara's strike. Like nothing that would make you incensed or mad or, like the whole thing that Jinx says, we've heard that it's going to be elongated. And it's like, oh my God. Just over the top, cartoony dialogue. And really, like, what is the problem with being able to say some stuff that, might get some people fired up? What's the problem with that? You almost never hear it out of WoW. What would be the issue of them saying, something like somebody should have broke her leg sooner? If I had the only thing I regret is that we didn't do it. Get them out of the way. It's a quicker ride to the top for us to go to the tag team championships. Or something. Not this drawn out, flowery soliloquy that they tried to put out there. So they do that, like I said, is in their over-the-top cartoon voices, and Collins is waving to people, and Jinx is doing what Jinx does. And they are just in full on Disney villainous mode here. So they say that just enough for Kara Kai to come charging out because of these poor insults they said about her friend. Is that all it takes to get her fired up? So she runs down the ringside and she makes a beeline for Katarina Jinx, and Collins is trying to get her off, and then Blaze comes over there and pushes her to the side. She gives a shot to Blaze, and Blaze punches her back, and Kai is over there just beating up on Jinx on the outside on the inside, because they said some mean things about her friend. And I'm, really thinking to myself, where was this energy when Top Tier's around? I mean, they're the one that did the damage, although also very poorly. But they're the ones that did the damage. And it's not like that building's going to, some mansion somewhere where you can't find these people. Like, they're literally on the same show and the same episode. If there ever was a call for a backstage segment or a backstage fight, that would be it. So why? Why did this not happen? And this wasn't a good match. So anyhow, we start off with Kai, who's, full of fire and vinegar or whatever the saying is. And she gets in there with Jinx. Jinx ducks underneath for a kick, scratches the back of Kara Kai, which I never liked because, then she's never going to get any skin because he's not going down to the midsection. So I don't care for the back rigs, but I guess she has to do it since she's a cat, you see. And then Kai gets up, and then Jinx gives a kick that doesn't come within a foot of her head. But Kai has to go down anyway. So now they got to get the heat on Kai, who came out there with all this fire and ready to fight. Animal instinct take control, and they start putting the heat on her. Here's a point when Collins is in the ring, and then she takes Kai by the hair and throws her out to not out of the ring, but her upper body through the top and middle rope. And as she's being thrown, Kai just immediately turns her body around and sits in position so that Collins and Jinx can do their back scratching routine. I was like, it didn't take her no time to. It's like, who goes to the ropes like that? Well, I'm just going to, you probably will never see another day that anybody gets tossed out the ropes and immediately turns their body upwards so that this nonsense could take place. So they're in there and they're doing the old, rocking spot. Collins is giving a forearm to Kai and pulling her back in. And every time she goes over, Jinx is over there playing with her hair like an idiot. It's just, yeah. So we get past that. Kai kicks out of this deadly maneuver that they did. Let's just get to the point where Kai starts to get away. She is able to make a break for it. She's in there with Jinx. Jinx has her in a submission hold. And she is trying to fight back, but is ineffective. They get into the corner, snap mirror out, and now you got Collins in there, and she's cranking down on the arms of Kai. Blaze is on the outside, begging and pleading for her new partner to come in and, make this tag. And I say new partner because, that's how they applied it. So Kai tries to make the escape. She tries to get through Collins' legs. Collins stops her. She is able to get her back up on the feet. Tries to rake the eyes or something to that effect it looked like, but Kai is able to turn that into like a jawbreaker. That forces Collins to fall backwards and make the tag out to her partner Jinx, and then the big tag to Ashley Blaze, and she comes in to clean house. Starts beating up on Jinx, catches her with a clothesline, catches her with the back elbow, catches her with the kick, catches her with a sweep. All good stuff, and she's fired up. Then we see Collins come in to prevent a pinfall. A pinfall that Blaze is clearly out of the way of by the time she jumps on her partner's body. And the overhead camera shot did not help that. I mean, if anything, it really illustrated the point that timing was off a little bit there. So then Collins is now up because she's hit her partner and she's like, incensed. So she tries to charge at Blaze. Blaze pulls the top rope down and Collins just throws herself out over the top rope because there's no way that she had any momentum to force her to do what she did. So as she takes her little jump over the top, Blaze gets Jinx and the TKO. Pops her, 1, 2, 3, they win the match. And Blaze and Kai have won, which is amazing to me because the dojo defenders act like they couldn't buy a win. But she swaps her partner, and then all of a sudden we got a win happening here. This was somewhat difficult to take. At the end of the match, McLean gets into the ring because he has to do the interview. And Kai and Blaze try to sell the severity of Tara Strike's knee. And, of course, they did talk about this on commentary throughout the match or at some point in there, basically alluding to that she might not be back. Or at least that's what McLean put it like. Well, I go up to doctors and, they said this, that, and the other. So Kai gets on the mic and is I forget who did it before, but it's kind of the same babyface promo that happens in WoW after so. Well, we're not going to take this anymore. We can't allow them to get away with this. So it's very WoW generic. Blaze is a far superior promo. She had a lot more fire to what she was saying. I just wish she had something else to apply it to rather than in this stupid angle. So McClain, before he goes at it, how does it feel to revenge your friend? I was like, okay, you probably meant avenge. Yes, that is a small thing, but he tends to do that a lot. where some words will get shuffled around. And again, I try not to give a hard time with that because I know that will happen. You will do that from time to time, but avenge, not revenge your friend. But that's what Blaze cuts the promo, and then, we just kind of move on from there. This really didn't do much to make me feel like, well, now I got to tune in so they can get even with goddamn top tier. This is what I expect from WoW. That's pretty much all I can say. That's what I expect out of them. The next segment was a recap of Daisy Lane and Chainsaw. This illustrates Daisy Lane and shows her new intro video. I still don't buy into this whole thing. And if anything, the more that I look at her, she just looks like I called it a wish list version of it, but I was corrected in saying that she's like a Temu version of Alexa Bliss, Fiend Alexa Bliss. Pretty much down to how she got her evilness. Some evil entity that she hung around long enough corrupted her soul to where she started wearing darker colors and started walking around with a doll. Gimmick infringement. How they just gonna take Alexa Bliss's thing like that? And again, if there's anything that's gonna make them look second rate, it'll be things like that. Because I'm sure if anybody that tunes in that has seen the WWE or even heard of the WWE in the last 5 or 6 years and seen the Alexa Bliss gimmick, it's not going to be lost on them that Daisy Lane is like a little clone of her, just not a good one. The next segment, Chainsaw with Daisy Lane versus Tiki Charmorro. I like Tiki, but her window is past. There was a point where I said, they missed their opportunity to try to get something out of her when she got those 2 unexpected wins over Penelope Pink, and those wins went nowhere. I mean, it may as well have never happened. Didn't elevate her, didn't help her out or anything, didn't introduce her to some sort of new angle, didn't present her as any better, didn't make her out to be the scrappy fighting underdog, nothing. It was just 2 wins that happened that were lost to time and don't mean a thing. Chainsaw, now having Daisy Lane is like, well, it just seemed like the entirety of that angle was there for her to swap out a manager. Angelica Dante is out, Daisy Lane is in. And I don't even know what to say about Lane at this point, other than that it is the dumbest motivation for somebody to flip heel that I've ever seen. She saw a 10-year-old child playing with a doll on a video from 20 years ago and was like, well, I have to be evil now. It is the dumbest motivation that I've ever seen. For somebody just to be like, oh, I got to turn. Anyway. So, as this is going on, McClain is still talking about the injuries of, Kai and Blaze. Labels the team from the previous match the new dojo defenders. So like, all right, well, this sounds like that Tara Strike's just been written off. Because I don't know why you would just be like, all right, well, it's the new Dojo Defenders. What do you need to call them the Dojo Defenders for? And it just be a tag team and, without the name. Because all that made me feel like is that at some point they're going to try to force Ashley Blaze into being the Terror Strike replacement. But anyway, getting back to the match. Like I said, at some point in time, I think, Tiki could have had the slot of the scrappy underdog, the one that fought against the odds, to try to win the big match and all that good stuff like that. But I really think that window has passed her by, unfortunately. And I don't know what it is in this particular match, but she's got a lot of overacting facials happening there. Like something doesn't go right, she just, the look on her face, like, is shock and awe to the 10th degree. And, I do appreciate the attempt for the sell. Is that some of it is comical, and she doesn't need to be comical. Especially when she's in there where she's supposedly in there with somebody who's supposed to be a monster in the wrestling sense, at least. Speaking of that, I would encourage Chainsaw not to be going out there interacting with the people on the front row because they're not going to be scared of you. And they weren't when they came out there, at the beginning of this match. All they did was like smile and put the thunderclappers together. And that ain't the response that you need to be getting when you're trying to portray being some psychopath monster. So if you can't get the reaction that you need to get off of them, then just don't engage with the front row. So anyhow, there are points in the match where you see Tiki do like I said, the underdog thing and try to pull you. It can't. Try to, get you out of the corner too strong. She's trying to out-quick and out-maneuver. But not only am I fighting against Chainsaw, but I'm also fighting against Daisy Lane. Chainsaw gets Tiki on the ropes and she starts yanking at her arms, pulling them back, which I, thought was, nice for her. Then Lane grabs the wrist and starts yanking down on him, pulling Tiki on the ropes. Big boot, which looked good by Chainsaw, though it was very distant because of the overhead cam. Then she drops a leg drop, and I don't know what she was trying to do at this point. Hold the nose of Tiki. Like, those things there just seem just stupid. I don't know what is that supposed to be doing other than being annoying. If she's going to be vicious, just be vicious. Fish hooker. Hook the nose, hook the mouth. But just holding the nose, it's like what you do when you're a kid and you're just trying to annoy your little brother or sister. I'm going to hold you and just squeeze your nose a little bit. But Tiki's able to get out of it. She's able to get some advantage. Well, I shouldn't say able to get out. She's released, basically. And as she's trying to get up, Chainsaw charges in. She gets caught in a drop toe hole and then just falls onto this second rope. And for whatever reason, she can't move, even though she was in full control, not but 2 seconds prior to that. Tiki hits her with her version of the 619. I forget what they call her area code. And then she tries to give Chainsaw the headbutts to keep her down. And she fires off one. Chainsaw absorbs that. Then she fires off another, and that puts Chainsaw down. Now, here's where I go, and I have a problem with that particular move, is that we, again, much like at the beginning of the show, we couldn't see it. Chainsaw took the hit, but you only know that she absorbed it from her body language from the back. And then she gets hit again, and we don't see the register of the move. Tiki, I assume at this point they've just gone ahead and given her like, okay, she has a pretty stiff headbutt that she can fire off on people. It hasn't really been talked up like that, but it seems to be that's the way that they're going. But I really would have liked to have seen the impact of the move to register with me and I guess the viewership in general. But as she gets that, then Lane comes over there and grabs the legs of Tiki, and she prevents her from pressing the advantage. And then Lane walks away from Tiki, only to turn around and come back and try to catch her with a clothesline as Tiki came out of the ring and confronts Daisy Lane. Tiki ducks underneath the clothesline attempt, grabs Daisy Lane's head, smashes her up against the apron, and not goddamn 5 seconds later, Daisy Lane's right back up on the feet yelling at her. Like, you can't even sell that. I mean, it wasn't going to hurt for her to just stay down. You know, I get that this new character and whatnot, but it's not your match, and it's not going to hurt you just to stay down for a second or two to sell the impact of the move. But she didn't do that. She just popped right back up on the feet and started giving Tiki lip. Tiki goes into the ring, you know, and she gets in facing outwards, yelling at Lane. And she could have did that anyway. She could have been yelling at her prone body saying, hey, look, that's what you get. But remember when I said Tiki has made some comical facial expressions? This is one of them. So she backs up in almost cartoon fashion where she comes up against Chainsaw and she slowly turns around until she's face to face with her, and then she gets caught with the choke slam. She gets goozled around the throat. Chainsaw gives her a choke slam. That puts her down. That ain't the finish. Then she comes off and hits her with the big splash. And there we go. 1, 2, 3. And Daisy Lane comes in and is like, hey, my turn now. And she gets hopped up on Chainsaw's shoulders, and she gets slung around so she could do another massacre slam or whatever they call it. None of these attacks after the match, by the way, are even, you know, addressed by David McLean. Like, hey, we need to stop that. I guess law and order doesn't exist in this particular instance because, well, just because. So she loses the match. She being Charmorro. She gets splashed. No punishment from McLean. And then tossed out of the ring, and then Kalaki comes out to help her friend. I can only assume that because that's what Dave McClain said. Oh, you know, here's her friend to help. And I can only guess that because, you know, everybody on the island knows each other or something. So there you go. Because I'm not sure if they spoke 2 words to each other since, you know, Kalaki's been on the show. But we're expected to accept them as friends. Well, you know, if nothing else, we can go off the logic of, well, they're still baby faces and baby faces stick up for each other. So, who is that? Lane. Lane gets on the microphone and she cuts a promo, which is basically saying that everybody thinks that, you know, I'm Chainsaw's pet or something like that. No, Chainsaw belongs to me. And I started off at the very beginning giving this angle some credit. Like, well, at least it makes sense. And she's depressed and Chainsaw gives her this and that, you know, trying to make her feel better, blah, blah, blah. For whatever reason, she had to do it. But then it just got to this point, and I do not like this angle. I don't like anything about it anymore. I do not like this angle. It is so dumb. Weeks worth of TV were wasted on, and I use that word specifically. Weeks worth of TV were wasted on this. Having this girl fight to try to get Chainsaw away from her sister, only to become the stand-in for Angelica Dante. It's like you right back where you started. What was the point of any of that? What was the point of this? I mean, I can't imagine anybody wrote this down and looked at it on paper and said this was a good idea beyond the people that are involved in it. Because I don't think Riley/Lane or Chainsaw probably knew any better. But that ain't no excuse for the people that wrote it. And I said earlier, you probably got some people that don't want to rock the boat, and maybe it didn't make any sense to them. Maybe they looked at it like, this is ridiculous, but let's try to make the best of it. That's possible. But anybody that's there that's thinking that somebody's going to get over to the point that they're going to actually have, a strong fan base, or people are going to watch because they, I love these matches, and this angle was great and it hooked me in. I was like, I cannot imagine a single person looking at any of these angles that they have portrayed themselves as being so great, watching this in its full entirety and saying that was worth it. I cannot imagine one of them. Not one. Because they all fall off the rails. All of them. Every time they've had some angle that even remotely started well, it falls off the rails somewhere in the complete and utter act of stupidity. They couldn't even get this thing going to where it could make some kind of... She couldn't go a couple of months before she started turning heel. And the Alexa Bliss ripoff thing, because that's what it is. Whether they intended to do it or not. I ain't saying that they went and watched an Alexa Bliss match and they're like, hey, we need to do that. But yeah, this is an Alexa Bliss ripoff. And the only thing that she has that Alexa Bliss didn't is she has her own little muscle. At least that I don't remember her having that. So, I don't know. Needless to say, this was a stupid angle, and I wish it would just be done. If this is the end of, just let it be done. I feel like I wasted weeks of my life looking at this nonsense for no payoff, because there is no payoff here. It just is what I just said. This is right back where Chainsaw started. At the very least, if you are a writer, this should be insulting to you. Because this would be a perfect example of there was no character growth here at all. It would be like writing your typical script where the guy starts off the movie as an asshole, but then by the end he learns to like people and this, that, and the other because his character grew. It would be like that movie happened and he just wound up being an asshole again. And nothing changed. He just changed the person that he was with. Now, of course, there are indie movies that will go and stretch that, but they know how to do that well, and they know how to do it artistically for the most part. Here is just, why did that take place? And I don't know. I have no idea why this took place, just because they just felt like doing it. Moving on. The next segment, Sibley Scoles interviewing Xena Phoenix again. Phoenix, I like her in the ring. She has a good look. She, performs well. I'm sure she's got some more time and experience to get underneath her belt. But she is a bland interview, and she is still the living embodiment of the participation award. Sibley Scoles, all due respect to her, good interviewer, not a good wrestling interviewer. I mean, could she get there? Sure. But she doesn't really help drive anything. And this was a pointless segment to begin with. There was nothing that was going on here beyond that. Xena Phoenix just had to get up on the screen and say that, well, I learned and I got better and, I'm going to do this. And I'm like, I wish she had more to say and more to add to who she is on camera. She doesn't get Xena Phoenix over. There's only a couple of reasons that you're having interviews to begin with. Get the character over. Get the angle over. Or whatever particular issue you might have. This does none of that, and Sibley Scoles does not help facilitate that. And there's nothing there for them to try to facilitate. She didn't even mention the fact that she was attacked. I shouldn't say that. Let me rephrase that thing about not mentioning stuff. She doesn't have enough fire to justify having a promo talking about an aftermath, being jumped or whatever. It's not like next time I see you, it's going to be this, that, and the other. It's just happy to be here. I'm glad I won. Yay me. And wow is the greatest, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you didn't watch that one segment, this 1 minute of the show that was plopped in there, you wouldn't have missed a thing. Wouldn't have helped you in the slightest. And all it did was, it was just there to fill some time and then go off into, all right, and for the main event, it'll be Spring Break 24/7 versus Top Tier. And I don't know what Sibley Scoles talking about. All right, guys, and the champ is here. That again, nothing against her, and I know that it wasn't meant as a literal statement, but she probably should work on the lines that would help get her over. Her being whoever she's interviewing at that particular time. Whether that be selling her as a dangerous competitor, whether that be selling her as a submission expert, whether that be selling her as the legitimate champion or, the top athlete, whatever it happens to be, not just a buddy statement. That's a buddy statement. All right, champ, that. It needs to be something else. That's all I can say. It needs to be something else. Our next segment, promo for the tag titles. Remember the ones that was announced at the beginning that already showed Penelope Pink and HollySwag with tag title belts? Well, I'm imagining that will come true next week or next episode. And then we go to the main event. Top Tier versus Spring Break 24/7. So, let's talk about Spring Break 24/7. When have they won a match? Now, that's not to say that I'm sure that they did. In fact, I think the one time that I can call off the top of my head that they won anything was when they were the tag team partners for Americana when she had to get revenge on who was that? The Heavy Metal Sisters. And Americana did all of 2 moves and called it a day. That was revenge. But I say that to say this. Spring Break 24/7 as a team has not been presented like some sort of top tier contender, no pun intended, to anybody. They've never been presented that way. They've always been presented as secondary, or not even secondary. Lower card fodder is what they've been presented as. So when this match was even announced, I'm like, why would I care about this match? For what reason should I care to even bother to tune in to see this as a main event? Because it ain't a main event. This is not a main event match. This is opening contest, maybe. And more or less, other than a couple of moments in between, it's like a glorified squash. But the top tier come out. And keep in mind that earlier, McLean had talked about, well, you know, I'd find top tier for their heinous acts of hurting poor old Tara Strike. I find top tier. That was the punishment. I fined them an undisclosed amount of money. Now, the last time we saw somebody get fined, Abilene Maverick, which came out the ringside with it was said to be $5,000. If you don't leave, I'm fining you $5,000. And she still didn't move. She had to be taken out. She had to be picked up and dragged out of there. Top tier came to ringside like there was no problem. Like they weren't bothered in the least by anything, fines or otherwise. And why would that be a punishment? That's not any more. I mean, let's just speak within the universe that they have tried to present. In their universe, top tier performed what was alleged to be a heinous act. Putting this girl in a sharpshooter, even though it was a dumb injury angle, but we'll just go with it. Putting her in the sharpshooter, punching her knee or her knee pads or shin guards. So I'm sure that hurt a lot. And tearing the ligaments in her leg, and for weeks, oh, we're thinking about Tara Strike, and it's horrible that happened. And well, we got to move. You know, they played this up like it was some sort of horrific injury that she had, and that was the punishment. I'm going to fine you. Not like, hey, you guys are suspended, or I'm taking these belts away from you, or something that would actually mean something on camera. Having them come out, first off saying that, oh, yeah, I made sure to punish them. I fined them. And then they come out laughing and smiling. I was like, well, how much did you fine them? Like $5? Why would this be? So this clearly is not some sort of punishment that they care about. So what difference did it make? So much to the point that they was about to do it again. Right in front of them. So it's like, so what? I very often do not understand what they are attempting to do. I mean, was it really going to hurt them to come out and be upset? Like, hey, you can't make us pay this $20,000 or whatever it is. How dare you? Or, you know, something. It was like another day. Nothing changed. It was another day, another match. Didn't mean a thing. And then we talk about their opponents. Spring Break 24/7. For the first time, we get all three members of Spring Break 24/7 together. We knew that it was going to happen eventually. Why they introduced Brittany Bay as some sort of single solo act when you knew that she was going to get integrated into this thing at one way or the other, I'll never know. It's just dumb ass wild logic. And I say that because they've been doing this as far back as when WoW was created. You don't believe me? Go back and look at their pay-per-view, WoW Unleashed, where they introduced a tag team of Nikki Law in whatever order. And for whatever reason, they decided to introduce them in a singles match. So I don't know. But here we got Spring Break 24/7 finally together. And lo and behold, the first time that they're together, one of them decides that, hey, you know what, guys? I need a different outfit. I've been wearing the same thing that Sandy Shore has been wearing all this time, but today, when we're all together as a unit, it's not going to be different than the two of you. So, anyhow, I'm jumping ahead to say that the match or the segment before the match, it starts off with a promo. And Campanelli basically says something to the effect, if you want people to keep watching, you have to have top tier. I was like, right. Yeah, sure. Top tier is going to drive viewership for a while. So, anyhow. At some point during this match, McClain makes it clear that his wrestlers have to do other things besides wrestle for a while. Now, he doesn't expressly say that, but when he starts talking about, yeah, so-and-so's studying in school and whatnot, I was like, just go ahead and say WOW is their side job. Because like everybody at WOW seemingly has another job. Big Rig Betty has her trucking company, and while she just wrestles on the weekends, I guess. Lana Starr allegedly, well, I'm acting out here, so, I just manage when I have time. So-and-so studying for, college and whatnot, which I'm sure is a real thing, but is that something that I would want to bring up on my show to make me sound like I'm secondary to Sandy Shore going after her marketing degree? Ain't a bad thing. I'm just saying, is that something that you would want to have on your show? So, this is a non-title match, and I'm not sure why it is, and I didn't care because, seriously. It's not like Spring Break 24/7 had any hopes of getting this whatsoever. And then I do have to ask, because it was asked of me in the room, it's like, why they call Spring Break 24/7? Like, what about them makes them some sort of spring breakers? And I was like, I don't know. So they go to the beach. It's like, I have no idea what's supposed to be. Like, there's been nothing about this team that would lead you to believe that there's some sort of nonstop party group. It's not like, and they're not going to show any of that. Come on. They're not going to show them hanging out at the beach, drinking and partying or at a club somewhere or whatever, or anything else that you might associate spring break with. They're just girls that hang out on the beach as far as this show is concerned. I have no idea why the term or the title or the team name of Spring Break 24/7 was assigned to them. Beyond that, somebody there thought it sounded good. So there you go. So I have no idea why that was what it was. But this match is pretty much everything that you expected it to be. Is a couple of bright spots by Spring Break 24/7 here and there. But ultimately, this is a showcase for top tier. And Spring Break 24/7 just happens to be the bodies that are in the ring for that. I'm still not overly sold on Waters. There are times where she needs to be working a little bit more and get this thing down. She feels like she's lost at times. Even when they were getting into the ring, it looked like she wanted to be where Sandy Shore was. Like she walked up to where she was going to go and be on the camera left, but Shore was already there. She had to stop and then just go in the middle. It always feels like there's just a step off. And then when they get into the ring, it's like they have to manufacture this pretend excitement that they've got, just bouncing around like, hey, guys, we're here to have fun and whatever. And Candy Crush starts off the match, and I forgot to bring up the fact that Crush is just an obnoxious character on screen. Like, I don't know what this thing is. Like I said, every faction seems to need one. Somebody who's going to be the obnoxious loudmouth who's going to grab the microphone just because I want to grab the microphone. And I forgot to mention that during that promo, it was, I have to give credit where it's due. Campanelli does cut a good promo for the benefit of her team. It was a promo designed to get Top Tier over. Now, do I agree with everything that she said in it? Of course not. But it's what she needed to say. Now, she can, again, I talked about this earlier. What I feel that would qualify as being a great team, they hit very few of those marks, if any. So if they want to go and call themselves that's well and fine. But I sincerely doubt that they're going to be ranked up there along the likes of great teams, duos, trios, factions, whichever one you want to apply. I mean, you can go down the line from top to bottom, rock and roll, Steiner Brothers, Dangerous Alliance, NWO, DX, Evolution, Bloodline, New Day, Usos. I mean, you name it. I'm pretty sure that they all know that no, they're not coming up close to any of them, especially having only existed for 3 months. On TV, it's probably more like 9, but something like that. Anyhow. That's beside the point. Promo was fine. Campanelli did a good job cutting the promo. Like I said, at the very least, there's direction when she does her promo. Get the team over, or at least I hope that's what she's doing, and it not just be incidental. I'm also completely convinced that the audience at large were told to say Top Tier sucks because they didn't seem to have any energy behind that, and it died off relatively quick. So there was no heat to that. They just was saying it just to say it. So back to the match. As stated before, I don't think anybody anywhere was going to be, if you watched this show for any length of time, had any doubt that not just Top Tier was going to win, but more importantly, that Spring Break 24/7 was going to lose. Sandy Shore did a pretty good spin kick out and through the ropes and catch glitter. I think she's probably one of the more experienced of the 3 on her team. But she ain't enough to hold that team together and prop them up. I mean, I'm sure she gave it a good college try, but as skilled as she may be, I don't think she's enough to hold that thing together. So what winds up happening here? Top Tier takes control of Sandy Shore. They get to beat up on her for a little while, up until, of course, Sandy Shore is able to get the hot tag, and she makes it off to Brittany Bay. Bay comes in, and she doesn't necessarily clean house. I don't know why she would come in and start doing the drop kick thing, because when she did it, it makes it so that Crush had to pretty much stop what she was doing and wait for her to get back up to her feet so she can drop kick her too. The first one on Campanelli was fine. Then it took a second for her to get back up so she could do that, and then Campanelli and Crush gotta get themselves both up, and then they go walking side by side so they can both get the third drop kick collectively. So they just walk into that. And then Bay is, yay, I did it. But here goes the downfall of them, because, it's not like Top Tier had to break out a foreign object or hit somebody in the face with anything or belts or nothing like that. They pretty much win on their own accord. Why? Because they're Top Tier and they just ain't going to lose. So Bay is caught in the ring with both Campanelli and Glitter. She tries to get Campanelli. Campanelli reverses whatever it is that she's about to do, shoots into Glitter. Glitter catches her on her shoulders in Firewoman's carry position, flings her over and brings her down across the knee. Then Crush gets into the ring, and that's when I guess they just wanted to swap it out so those two could do the finish. They do a double face plant. Meanwhile, on the other side, Crystal Waters and Sandy Shore just like laid out across it, just watching this take place. They just didn't move. Waters is on the floor. Sandy Shore was in perfect camera shot to show you that she was watching it, and just, I guess, didn't have the strength to roll over and try to stop this in any way. So they're down. Both Crush and Campanelli hit their finish. 1, 2, 3 is done. And so they decide to grab all 3 members of Spring Break 24/7, drag them into the middle of the ring, and all attempt to go for a sharpshooter collectively. Now, keep in mind, David McClain is sitting right there at ringside for something that he saw 2 or 3 weeks ago on TV time. 2 or 3 weeks ago, that allegedly hurt this girl so bad that she is going to be out indefinitely, and yet and still is going to sit there and watch this take place and not do a fucking thing about it. So he just looks at this. And then as they are slowly putting on these sharpshooters, and you knew, I was like, the second they was all in there lined up in a row and each of them taking their goddamn time doing it, I was like, okay, something's about to happen. Because none of the 3 of them were capable at all of fighting out of this whatsoever. They're just all just down on the mat, no effort, no struggle, no nothing. Just hold my legs and put me in this thing. I mean, at least Glitter and tried to kick Sore a little bit to give her some reason to stay on the ground. I mean, they all gave him individual kicks, but I mean, my God, you can't wiggle around or something. So they all try to go for their sharpshooters. Like I said, here's McClain. I can't believe this is happening. But doesn't bother to do anything, regardless of the fact that he's the authority and he can hire and fire people when he feels like it, or levy out some kind of punishment that would be worth something, because apparently the fine meant nothing. They're trying to do it again right in front of them. What kind of fine did you give them? You guys don't do that anymore. That'll be $5 from each of you. That'll show you. Good grief. And then as this takes place and they get ready to go, Ashley Blaze and Karakai, just the 2 of them, without anything, come running down the ringside, and all 3 members of Top Tier just bail out. Because, the 2 of them could take all 3 of them at any given time, you see. At least pretend to have an equalizer. Come out with a chair or something. Like, I need something in my hand. Why can I come out with that? But yeah, all 3 members of Top Tier bail out at the sight of Ashley Blaze and Karakai, just the 2 of them, and they run them all off. And Karakai is so mad and so upset that this invisible force field that takes place around the wrestling ring prevented her from going out and doing anything and chasing them down. I mean, because, I would think that if my best friend or partner got hurt to that degree, I don't know if I would stop just because I got into the ring. But that's just me. So there we have it. And they console the members of Spring Break 24/7 from their embarrassing loss of, losing to Top Tier. But I guess it shouldn't be embarrassing because they lose quite frequently. Overall, I was indifferent to this entire episode. I just did not care. I walked into this thing fully expecting it to be just bland and awful and the storytelling to be off the chain bad. So that it did anything of any note to any sort of continuity that I could accept was surprising to me, but it was very little of that. My question that I wrote to myself on my notes was, who are you able to get behind on this show? Who there is over to where you could get behind anybody on this show? It's like I can't make myself do it because there's no one there who's over. Everyone is the same. Everyone is in the same pocket. It's like WoW expects you to want to see WoW just because it's WoW. And we're all stars here. And that's nice. It's a nice sentiment. It's a nice thought, but wrestling has always had some star within its promotion, whether that be on a small level or whether that be on a high level, but somebody there is usually separated from the pack when they start illustrating that they have a certain level of charisma, a certain level of in-ring ability, a certain level of promo, a certain level of getting people to come behind and believe in them and want to see them either succeed or want to see them get beat. WoW doesn't have any of that. It just doesn't. It doesn't have any of that. There's not a single person on that roster that provides that. And that's not necessarily all their fault. Some of them, it is their fault because they don't know better. And they probably, just being trained through WoW is not going to teach them anything other than how to function in WoW. The rest of them are being handicapped because there's nothing that they can do other than, hey, I want you to go out here, make sure you don't make so-and-so look bad because you're moving too fast. And then, like I said, the promos. Like, I want Xena Phoenix to do well. I do. Because she looks like she could be a star. But she is not given any sort of, seemingly, I'll just say seemingly, is not given any sort of direction behind what she says. And Scoles is not in a position to help navigate interviews to help that along. Daisy Lane just comes off to me like a cheap imitation. Chainsaw went in a complete circle in her narrative. Top Tier just exists just to amuse themselves. We're trios team, and I stand by what I said. This is vanity belts. They mean nothing. They have no lineage to it. They haven't beaten anybody in any significant match for it or to defend it. They defended it plenty. But not one of those matches are you ever going to look back on and be like, this helped elevate these belts. No one, whether that be the fault of WoW or not, is over in that company. And they just do things that is almost like it's on purpose. And that doesn't make any sense. But I was like, why would you do this? Like BK Rhythm and Gianni. Why put them in a faction that the faction doesn't participate with 90% of what they do? The faction didn't even say why they exist. Animal Instinct. It's hard to look at them and be like, all right, this is some sort of blood feud because they can never be serious. Even when they're doing a dog collar thing, like, okay, the match in and of itself they were better at. But promo wise, getting the personalities of the reasons why they're in this thing. And like nothing in that made me want to see them. Even the injury angle that they did, like they took 2 fabric collars and punched. They might as well have just punched Jones and Betty with their fists. The prop department is even bad. Like everything from top, it comes off to me, and it's probably because I see so much of it. I see so much of it, and then I get to hear the stuff behind the scenes, and then I'm looking at the press and the way they orchestrate that, and then I'm seeing it on the metadata on different channels. I was like, it just wherever I look at WoW, it always comes up like it is halfway done, or it's just good enough. It's like that's all they aim for. It's just to be good enough. And as long as they can keep their money mark happy, then that's all that counts. For our leader, Jeannie Buss, I was like, as long as that happens, they're fine. And she can keep pumping money into it until either she says, all right, that's enough, or the network that they're on be like, okay, well, we're moving on to something else. But that's the only thing that I think that WoW does well to begin with, is that they found the money mark, and she will just continue to feed it money until one day she doesn't. But they have indoctrinated a couple of their roster members into believing that that's what wrestling is supposed to be. And I know there's people there right now who know differently. They probably can't convince them all of that, but I know for a fact there's people on that roster right now that know differently. This should probably not be done this way. It would be easier if we did this. It might get more attention if we did that. But WoW does just enough. And they're not trying to go any further than that. That's what it comes off to me. Every angle, every storyline, everything that they've tried to do up to this point is always just enough. It is not even remotely in the purview to try to do a bit more. And the idea, because it's been floated that they would like better, more attention onto their product. Look, but how are you going to get that? How are you going to get more attention onto the product when there's no one there to care about? How could you be comparative to another wrestling program that there's nothing there for you to even remotely think that this is worth my time? The NWA is an awful product right now. And it doesn't even get good viewers, good viewership. It's hard to watch because it airs through Twitter or X. And even they get views. I mean, some of those views might be, based on old stuff that they shot, like say a year ago or what have you. But even the ones that they upload in recent days or months or whatever, they're usually averaging somewhere about 2,000 viewers or so on the average. And keep in mind, they're doing that without TV. They do not have television. They don't have the means to promote their stuff or pay-per-views or anything like that. It is all built off of, I don't even know why they took it off of YouTube, but it's all built off of them being on YouTube and Twitter or X. And they still get it, with a bunch of people that have us probably barely know. Now, when they have a good match, they have a good match. And, some people might go out and seek it out past that point because I've had to do that. But the end result here, getting back to the point of WoW, is that there's no one there that drives anybody to want to watch it. And I will be clear to say that that's not all their fault. The participants, the roster members, whatever. I just want to make sure that that is understood. That's not on them. It's how this show is structured, and it's how the creative is run. And in fairness to them, I'm not going to sit here and be like, well, that's easy. You should just do this, this, and this. Because, it's easy to be a backseat driver or Monday morning quarterback or whatever, example you want to throw in. It's easy to do that. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, well, if they just did this and that. But I will say is that they don't do anything to help their cause. They don't do anything that helps push this thing up or get anybody to where they actually have some star power. And even when they do stuff beyond WoW, it's like some of that narrative doesn't make sense. Like you can't expect people to want to lose themselves in your television show with these allegedly bad people when they're showing up to do Make-A-Wish. Now that's fine. I ain't saying that it's not a nice gesture to have your stars appear at a hospital and make some kids happy. But can't you grab some of your baby faces to do that? Because why would they turn around and be like booing this person on TV who came there and helped them out and made them smile and all this stuff? It's like, things like that, which I know are not viewed by them as some sort of major thing, but everything counts. Wrestling is not perceived like average scripted television. It's not perceived that way. I don't care what you tell those people that answer those ads in the back of the page. It's not perceived that way. And it's never going to be perceived that way. I don't care what the WWE is trying to, because they do. They've tried on multiple occasions to get people to believe that somehow they're not wrestling. But as long as the term sports entertainment has been around, they have never convinced people like, well, we're going to the sports entertainment tonight. No one says that. And I know that there's been people out there that wild talents like, yeah, well, we make wrestling for people who don't necessarily watch wrestling, which is stupid because they have everything else on TV to watch for that. So all of that to say, it would be nice if while focused is creative to try to make sense. It would be nice if while focused to try to get a person or team or even the belt over to where people would want to see it defended or the person win or lose it or whatever the case may be. But it's so hard for them. It's so hard because no one can be what that show needs them to be. A money draw that people can get behind or at least watch. In their case, a money draw be somebody that fans will want to see week to week or whenever they show up or whenever they advertise. They're not, no one does that. They don't make that. And I'm sorry, top tier is not the answer to that. The Class Master is not the answer to that. Unfortunately, Big Rigs and Bourbon could be the answer to that, but they're not going to get that chance. They are probably as legitimate, and I mean, when I say legitimate, I mean presented as real people. They're probably as close to that as you're going to get on WoW. But even that, they are real people that exist in cartoon land. So that's that. And what is due for their next episode? Well, I'll tell you. because the previews are in front of me, and we might as well read that before we close this thing up. So here's the preview for the next episode of WoW. It is titled, Who's Fabbest of the Four? And it reads as follows. Lindsay and Laurie Carlson of Miami Sweet Heat are in a major tag team rematch this week as the twins face Tormenta and Princess Aussie. This matchup marks a rare occasion where Miami Sweet Heat isn't focused on the Fab Four. Anyway, basically what they're saying is they're not the focus of the Fab Four in this particular instance. Lana Star has secured a main event championship matchup for teammates Penelope Pink and HollySwag versus tag champs Big Rigs Bourbon and Jesse Jones, marking the first time mother and daughter will face off in the ring. That's not completely true. Gigi Gianni is determined to settle the score on behalf of the Alliance as she takes on Chantella Cella. So we're addressing a match that took place 2 or 3 weeks ago. Genesis remains determined to prove she's worthy of the championship title as she battles the rising star Roxy Fierce. Santana Garrett confronts David McClain, reminding him of a past promise and brings receipts. I'm afraid to see what that angle is. Santana Garrett reminding him of a past promise. I'm sure it has to be some title match, but I don't know. Anyhow, okay. We got a rematch with Miami Sweet Heat against Aussie and Tormenta. We'll see how that goes. I expect Pink and Swag to win. And no, this is not the first time mother and daughter will be facing off in the ring. I mean, sure, they can sell that to their WoW audience, but Hollywood and Amazing Maria already fought. Matter of fact, they fought several times across multiple promotions. So I wouldn't necessarily say this is the first time they face off in the ring. Face off in a WoW ring, yes. Gianni determined to settle the score on the behalf of the Alliance. Why she now wanting to take on this person after when was the last time they even crossed paths with each other? 2-3 weeks ago? Why wouldn't she want to get even with Xena Phoenix for nearly breaking her friend's arm the previous week? And it's no. I better not even start with that. I'll just wait until it airs, and maybe I'll be able to tolerate it and sit through it. And it may surprise me. Every once in a while, a WoW episode will surprise me. I don't know if this will be the one, but we will see. So, getting out of this, thank God, we will close it up and say that, hey, if you like this, like, share, and subscribe. Do the YouTube things. I appreciate it. If you listen to this on any sort of podcast platform, subscribe and review and rate. This is on the greater podcast platforms everywhere. And if you, for whatever reason, are not doing it there and just happen to stumble across this on YouTube, as I said before, and you want to find out where you can get the MP3s or downloads, well, you can go to WPNWrestling.com. WPNWrestling.com. 24-hour stream, 7 days a week, every day, all day, for videos dating back to 2013, and every podcast episode is uploaded there as well. So you can go there and you get everything that you need off of me, because everything goes into that spot. And with that, I think that has covered all the ground and got me through so much stuff. I didn't realize I was doing such a long episode. But I appreciate your time, and I appreciate your ears, and I appreciate you giving me your attention so that we can go through this and let me vent about WoW and what WoW likes to do. And on that note, this is Mr. Green saying that this is Mr. Green saying so long, and we will see you on the next go-round. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the WPN's Rights and Wrongs of Pro Wrestling. If you have questions or comments, please contact us via our Facebook or our YouTube channel at the Women's Pro Wrestling Network. If you're new to the WPN, feel free to subscribe to our channel and like our page. We appreciate your support. Thank you again for listening.